We're live, John.
All right, here we are.
Professor O'Brien, glad to be with you. Jeremy Sickine, Ann Wheeler, Diana Lynch. Forgive me, Diana. Very good to be with everyone tonight. We have an extraordinary guest and really an extraordinary book and story. Jon Gluck, of course, will tell us his story, but it begins in November of 2022 when he slipped on some ice. And it turned out to be, I will let him tell the story. 23 years later, thank God he is still with us. And what sounded at the time like a death sentence has become a chronic disease. And this is happening to more and more Americans. And he's written just really a beautiful story here, in Exercise in Uncertainty. And he joins us now, Jonathan Gluck. John, thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks so much for having me.
Do you mind telling us what your diagnosis was?
No, of course. Yeah. So as you say, in 2002, I was leaving my office one night and I slipped on the ice and I didn't even fall. I just sort of twisted my hip a little bit and I went on my way. And the next morning I woke up and my hip hurt quite a bit. And I thought to myself, that's unusual. It didn't fall. Didn't seem like that big a deal. I was 37 years old at the time. So I thought, well, maybe this is just the aches and pains of life, starting to kick in. You twist your hip a little and this is what you get. So I waited a couple of months and it didn't go away. And I went and saw the doctor and he took an x-ray, didn't see anything, just gave me a physical therapy prescription. And fast forward to a full year later, when the following November came around, this is now 2003, I realized, wow, it's been a year since this happened. And not only has it not gotten better, but it's gotten worse. In the interim, I had my first child, a baby girl who was 7 months old at the time in that November of 2003. And I was having trouble picking her up and putting her in her crib. I was having trouble getting up and downstairs, in and out of cabs. I thought I better go back to the doctor. So I went to the doctor. This time they took an MRI. And I got a phone call from his office saying, Dr. Wiener would like you to come in to talk about your test results. And I was so incredibly naive. I had no idea, what I was about to learn. I
thought he wanted to congratulate you or something?
Yeah, I thought, what a nice guy, in this day and age, calling me in to talk about my test results in person instead of just through, over the phone or through an email or something. So I got there, and the second I got there, I sort of knew something was up because the receptionist had obviously been prepared for my arrival, and she immediately turned around and kind of gave a signal to one of the physician's assistants, who took me straight to the examination room, not to the waiting room. And within seconds, my doctor came in and closed the door, and he said, I have to tell you, you have a lesion on your hip. And I didn't even know what the term meant. I said, a lesion? What does that mean? Is that like a tumor? And he said, yes. And I said, does that mean I have cancer? And he said, yes. And just like that, as I say, bolt out of the blue, I had no family history. I had no risk factors in particular. Certainly, an achy hip did not make me think, that cancer was even on the table as a possibility. And yet there I was, the father of a 7-month-old and in a job I loved, and living in a new apartment with my wife that we just bought 6 months earlier. And, that's the news I got.
Yeah. And we should explain, I think you were at New York Magazine then, right?
That's correct.
No, right before Vogue. And we will talk about that. What does a bolt out of the blue like that feel like in that moment?
Yeah, it's just pure shock. It doesn't seem real. And, people talk about the 5 stages of grief, and the first is denial. I had denial, in abundance, let's say. The first words out of my mouth were literally, no, 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 5 times denial. This can't be happening. I have a 7-month-old baby girl. It's not possible. And then, of course, it sets in, and I started asking sort of crazy questions, trying to wiggle off the hook, so to speak. Is it possible it's not this? It's just something else. I think I said, could it be a bone spur or something? I didn't know what I was talking about. I was just grasping at straws. And my doctor very kindly, batted back all my crackpot theories and said that it was, I suppose, possible. He was very kind and gentle with me, but not very likely that it was anything other than one form or another of cancer. At that point in time, they thought I had bone cancer. And it turned out, after what I learned was a much more lengthy process than I imagined to diagnose the disease as complex as the disease it turns out I have. I learned I have a type of bone marrow cancer called multiple myeloma. And at the time, I was told I might have as little as 18 months to live, maybe 3 years. And as you alluded to earlier, that's now 21, almost 22 years ago and counting. And yeah, it's not a stretch to say I'm something of a medical miracle.
You went into a experimental treatment program at one point. And tell us about that, because it wasn't until I went through your book that I quite understood what that's like. I mean, it's worth doing, but it's an experiment, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And, the basic pattern of what I've been through now. So, what I have is not curable, but it turns out, to my great good fortune, it's proven to be treatable. So, what happens is I get sick, they treat me with something that puts me into a remission, maybe a partial remission, maybe if I'm lucky, a complete remission, maybe for a short period of time, maybe if I'm lucky for a long period of time, number of years. And then I get sick again and they treat me again. I go into a remission again and so on. And I've had dozens of treatments now over the years, some of them lasting months at a time, others lasting years at a time. And the treatment you're referring to, I had 2 summers ago, which is a very cutting edge form of treatment called CAR T therapy. And it's sort of almost mind blowingly sci fi ish.
Mhm.
What they do in a nutshell is uh, they put an IV in one arm and an IV in the other, and they take your draw blood from you in a constant stream for 6 or 7 hours, run it through a centrifuge, and separate out your T cells. And our T cells, as many of us know, are a key component of your immune system. And then they send those cells to a lab and they turbocharge them with a particle that can actually hunt down, when they put it back into you later, it can actually hunt down your cancer cells in particular and attach itself to them. And then the T cell itself is souped up so that it's more powerful in attacking the cancer cells. And the huge advantage of that is, unlike chemotherapy or radiation, which are essentially carpet bombing everything, healthy cells, healthy tissue, and cancer cells, this treatment is so targeted that it treats the cancer more effectively, but also leaves less damage around it.
I understand there's no simple question to this, and this is why you've written answer to this, and this is why you've written the book. But how do you live with this day today? Not to have something terrible in the rear view mirror, but something that hangs on to your life year after year after year.
Yeah, that's been one of the biggest challenges. Obviously, I'm extremely fortunate to still be here and I wouldn't trade it for anything. But at the same time, when you're in this group I'm in of people who live with these cancers that are not curable but are treatable, luckily, that sword is hanging over your head all the time. Um, I've come to calling the group of us cancer zombies. That's, a term that popped in my mind one day when I was writing the book. And what I mean by that is, zombies are half dead and half alive forever. And cancer zombies are half well and half sick forever. And so you live in this state of permanent limbo, wondering when you're going to get sick again, because you are eventually. And in the course of writing the book, I did a bunch of research on what's known about that, waiting through difficult periods like this, and in our case, extended periods. And I stumbled across a woman who studies that very subject for a living, and it was fascinating. She, taught me a ton about living with uncertainty. And one of the most interesting things is we're really bad at it, human beings. We don't like uncertainty. She told me about an experiment where people were divided into 2 groups and told they were going to get a small electrical shock. One group would and one group wouldn't. And a very large percentage of the people, after a very short period of time, said, just give me the shock. In other words, they'd rather have the
Yeah.
negative happen, and just get it over with than keep waiting, because the waiting is so uncomfortable. Uh, so I said to this woman, her name is Kate Sweeney. I said, so is there anything we can do about this? And she said, sure, there are things that are common sense, distract yourself as best you can. The best thing that her research has shown you can do is get deeply involved with something, that brings you into the zone, as the current phrase goes, or the flow state. So that could be baking or yoga or reading, whatever it is for different people. For me, it's fly fishing. I like to fly fish. And the idea is anything that gets you so deeply absorbed in the moment that it presses out your, anxieties and concerns. So I've really tried to practice that. At the same time, I asked Kate Sweeney, what do you do? You're an expert in this. And she said, I said, how do you handle this kind of anxiety? And she said, not very well. And I said, well, that's depressing. And she said, the way she looks at it is, it's important for people to understand that we all struggle with this. And I find that very comforting. And that way you're not beating yourself up on top of everything else. Why aren't I better at handling this? Um, we all struggle with uncertainty, and it's normal.
Let's take some questions that are coming in, Caroline.
We had a question from S.R. O'Brien, which was, what tools are the most effective for dealing with uncertainty and living in the moment? But I think you've essentially answered that. I have another question, which is, let's see, it's right here. From Diana Lynch. Question: the T cells are targeted, but is this only for certain cancers, or can they be used for all cancers?
It's certain cancers, but it's quite a number of them. And, I would suggest, I don't, as much as I've been through this treatment now and researched it and wrote about it, for my book, I can't emphasize enough that I'm not a medical doctor and I don't want to, give medical advice. I would say ask your doctor if you're concerned, either in your own case or for the sake of somebody if it's appropriate for your particular illness. But has been used in quite a number of illnesses. And what I will say is it's been shown to be particularly effective so far in blood cancers. So what I have is alternately called a bone marrow cancer or a blood cancer. Both terms apply. So anything in the leukemia, lymphoma, multiple myeloma type family, for lack of a better word, CAR T therapy has been shown to be remarkably effective so far. So I would certainly talk to your doctor about it.
Another question from Linda Grimm. Was your treatment CDC funded? And if so, is the funding continuing?
It's a great question. It's a question I get a lot. It's not that the treatment itself was CDC funded or NIH funded or funded by any other branch of government or government organization, I should say. It's that all these treatments and all the drugs I've been on, as they were being developed, benefited from that kind of funding. So that's what's so worrisome now, that funding has been restricted, is that the very drugs that have kept me alive. I mean, I'm here to tell you in the most direct possible way that I would not be here today if it weren't for that funding. The funding of that kind of research that leads to these kinds of drugs that very literally saves lives. And I am a walking, breathing example of it. That's what's being taken away. And, people ask me, what can we do about it? I would say, do all the things we know we can do, write to your government representatives on every level, fight the good fight. But also private donations are increasingly important right now. That's always been a big part of the equation, frankly, but it's an even bigger part now. So anything anyone can do who cares about this issue to help fund, whether it's a cancer research hospital or a particular, if you see a GoFundMe for somebody looking for an experiment who's in a clinical trial, all these things need all of our support. And yeah, it's certainly a very pressing issue.
It occurs to me as we sit here in conversation that we have children about the same age. As a journalist, you will understand why I have to ask this question. Do you bring yourself to say, oh, I can't wait until you graduate? Or I can't, you enjoy fishing. I can't wait until we take such and such a trip. can you let yourself say that, or does there always have to be the scintilla of I don't know?
Yeah, I would say it depends on where I'm at in my life, in my treatment, in my illness. There have been times where my fate has been a little bit less certain, where I tend, as you, I think, very wisely infer, to not make a lot of promises for tomorrow or further down the road, and raise the even the idea of things that we're going to do in the future. My time horizon for what I plan and what I even simple things, small trips or uh, dinners out with friends. When I've been deep in the depths of my illness, I tend to kind of contract everything and not look out very far ahead past a couple of days in some cases, maybe a couple hours or minutes in some cases. Um, but then when I'm doing better, strangely enough, and I hesitate to give cancer credit for anything good, but I'm actually almost hyperactive about, wanting to make plans and to talking about the future and doing things. I learned this term over the course of writing the book, called precrastination, the opposite. I love it. Yeah, I just stumbled across it. But procrastination obviously is you can't help things off. Precrastination is you can't help but do things right this minute. And I've kind of got that, disease now in a good way. If I feel like doing something with a friend and I'm well, I'll text them that second. I don't wait. If I feel like planning a trip when I'm well, even if it's halfway around the world, I have learned to try and take advantage of the moment because, obviously none of us is promised tomorrow, as they say.
Yeah. Well, I know we say we all know none of us is promised tomorrow, but obviously you have lived with that in a way that, as you write about so beautifully in this book, in a way that just practically has to weigh on you. There are more people who have lives kind of like yours these days, aren't there? And I guess we should be happy about that.
Yeah, as I say, we're this sort of new cohort when you think about it. In all of human history, it used to be cancer was a death sentence, plain and simple. Um, but with all these advancements in treatment, not just for the type of cancer I have, but for many types of cancers, unfortunately, not for all. There are some, cancers that are still proving to be incredibly stubborn to treat. But for many cancers, and the overall cancer survival rate reflects this, there are treatments that are keeping people alive longer and longer. But that presents all kinds of challenges. It presents challenges, mental health challenges of the sort we've already talked
Yeah.
about. Present, excuse me, presents physical health challenges that are obvious. It presents challenges to your finances. Some of these treatments I've had literally cost millions of dollars. I've been incredibly fortunate that I've had good health insurance, or my wife has when I've been out of work that I've been able to go on. But even with that, we've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on my medical care. And if we weren't that fortunate, we would have been broke 50 times over. Um, so it presents challenges on the individual level. It presents challenges to our society about what are we going to do to treat all these people who are living longer and longer, both just because people are living longer who are healthy, and also people who are living longer because of these medications and treatments that can help them stay alive even with chronic illnesses. So it presents challenges for your career. I mean, I could go. There's no part of your life that a disease this
Yeah.
doesn't touch. Um, and
Well, I think are you right about the touch on that when you were at Vogue? By the way, you like Anna Wintour. We should say that.
very
Uh,
much,
but you know, will employers hire people if they know there's so many extra costs built into their coverage? Will they get rid of people if they think we just can't afford? I mean, these
yeah,
are actual practical questions in so many lives.
a lot of questions affecting more and more of us for sure. When I applied for one job after I was out of work for a bit, somebody asked me how I was doing, and it kind of caught me off guard a little bit. And they said they had read about, because I had written an essay about
Yeah.
my time or shortly before that, and they asked how I was doing, and you know, I think they were very well meaning. I really do. But I also, when you're in my situation, you have to wonder, like, are they asking because they want to know if I'm hireable or not, which of course is illegal. Um, but there are ways of working around that. And one thing
Mhm.
that I realized, another thing I learned researching the book is that employment discrimination charges or allegations or cases are the number one uh, issue brought before the EEOC. So it's not like this is a thing that happens here and there. It happens all the time, every day. And with more and more of us in this position, it's going to happen even more.
Um, I feel the need to ask this of you as what counts in life?
Yeah. Wow. It's a powerful question. I have to say, one of the things, again, I don't want to give cancer credit for anything good. Somebody once made a great analogy. They said to me, uh, you don't want to think anything, you don't want to treat cancer too nicely. It's like a house guest. If you do, it'll stick around too long. So, that said, I have to admit there are some things I've learned that are valuable and hopefully maybe valuable to other people. And one of them is exactly what you just asked about, what counts in life. And for me, it's simple. It's family and friends and doing the things you love. As I say, don't wait. If you are interested in something, do it now because you never know. Um, I work very hard. I enjoy what I do. But I'm also careful to, carve out plenty of time for my wife and kids and my brothers and sisters and the rest of my family and friends. I play in a poker game every Monday night, with some guys I've been playing this game with literally for decades. Um, do the things that bring you joy and make sure that you make time for them. And fishing also, as I talked about before, I try and go on a trip depicted on the cover of the book. I try to go on fish someplace new at least once a year, every year. It's a great way, if nothing else, just to organize my travel. A great idea to organize my travel around.
I did again, but don't cover his name.
Oh,
There. It's a lovely cover.
it is a lovely cover.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you. And
Despite the fact he's shown fishing, I'm not big on the outdoors, John, as you may have heard. I just actually I have an active contempt for the outdoors, with the possible exception of jalapenos. I think that's about it, right? More or less. That's nature to me. Look, this is just a wonderful book, and I can't thank you enough for donating, for expending the time and effort to be able to write this book and share this with so many people. I think it's very important. So,
Yeah, it's been lovely to see the response. People really seem moved by it, and many people have written me to say that they've been through something similar, whether it's an illness, whether it's my illness, a different illness, or just a challenge in life in general, and that they've found some comfort in some of the things I've said. So if I've touched one person that way, it was easily worth it.
so Jonathan Gluck's excellent book, An Exercise in Uncertainty. So thanks very much, everyone, for being with us on our open book tonight. Thank you for spending some time with us, and very good to be with you. And we'll see you later. Thank you very much.